Hey guys, it's Sutonia, and today I'm going to do a breakdown of the Navy faction ships, my opinions on all of them, and I've got a lot of stats here from eveiseasy.com, which is a great website. This is taken from the 1v1 analysis section of their website, and I basically just put a load of stats into the spreadsheet. I've also taken some stats from Keyboard too, and I'll speak about how I think of all of them. So I think this class is balanced overall. I think the Federation Navy Comet is a little overpowered right now. I think the Morlus Navy issue is a little underpowered. But overall, I think they're all very, very well balanced. I'd put, aside from the Comet and the Morlus Navy issue, the other 6 are great. They all have their own uses. They all have different strengths and weaknesses, which is really great for this class. So going into these individual stats, I'm really surprised that the Slicer is really low performing here. It's worth mentioning, though, that a lot of the stats are taken from Factional Warfare Space, where the Slicers tend to... If a Slicer's already in a Plex, people tend to not go into it. And if a Slicer is coming into... So Slicers are normally the aggressors and normally coming into Plexes. And if they do that, then sometimes there's an NPC on the mail of the person they kill, if they're coming into a someone who's in FW. And then it won't be reflected in solo kills. So keep that in mind. That might be one reason why the Slicer is poor performing in these stats. Because it doesn't really make too much sense to me. It's also, I mean, the Slicer is also a ship that requires a lot of skill to fly. Obviously, if it was Chessa only represented in all of these stats, it would probably be much, much better. But anyway, Crucified Navy issue is a neutral matchup, which kind of is confusing to me because the Slicer fights outside optimal of the tracking disruptor. But it is possible that the fall-off of the tracking disruptor maybe just forces the Slicer to not be able to kill. And if it comes in too close to commit, it gets killed, so it just has to warp off. Has a slightly underneath neutral against Hookbill. The Hookbill's a bit slow. So I'm not sure if the Hookbill is catching the Slicer by slingshotting, but you know, dual prop Hookbills are quite common. Dual web Hookbills also are quite dangerous, and maybe if a Slicer's coming into a Hookbill and the Hookbill's already set up in the FW beacon, then maybe it just gets dual webbed, and maybe it can't really escape from dual webs, because again, dual web Hookbill is also a common archetype. And also the control Hookbill, which is a Hookbill with a tracking disruptor normally, could probably just force it to come in or just warp off. Maybe that's also why it's such a bad matchup. Again, Griffin Navy issue is also another one that's quite surprising, because the Slicer should just win. The Slicer, if it's fighting a Griffin Navy issue, is well out of the optimal fall of the ECM, so it'll never get jammed. It should just be a free kill, in my opinion, unless it's getting caught coming in or caught out in some way. But there is a lot of there's a lot of like fights have happened between these two ships, so that's quite confusing. But I guess Griffin Navy issues normally run NW Scram triple ECM. Maybe Slicers in FW are too used to fighting AB only ships and they're bad and they get caught or something. I'm not too sure why it's such a neutral matchup in this list. Against the Comet, the Comet's really fast, it's got great agility, so it's great at slingshotting the Slicer if it's an MWD fit. Rail Comet in FW low sec, even with the AB, you can just force a Slicer to leave every time, and maybe it just gets caught coming into the beacon, which might also explain why the Comet matchup is so low. Morlus Navy issue is slightly below neutral. I think that might be just because the Morlus Navy has the bonus scram. Maybe that's a threat to the Slicer. Otherwise, again, I think this is a matchup the Slicer should win. Firetail is the fastest Navy frigate, so maybe that's why the Slicer's performing badly against it. Firetails are also dual web, and it has high scan resolution, so maybe if a Slicer's coming into a Plex with a Firetail on it, maybe the dual web RT Firetail is able to lock it and get dual webs on it before it can kind of get out, in most cases. That might also be a consideration. Also, dual prop Firetail is pretty common too. Vigil Fleet issue just has the 19.5 kilometer web, so I guess it makes sense that the Slicer sucks against it. Going into the Crucify Navy issue, Crucify, again, kind of weird that it has a bonus matchup against the Slicer. I think that might just be like FW shenanigans though. I think kiters tend to always be represented poorly in these kind of lists because it doesn't like count someone warping out as a win. Anyway, the Crucified Navy issue has a bad matchup against the Hookbill. That makes sense. Dual web Hookbill. Even if it's tracking disrupted, the Hookbill has range control, and if it has dual webs on the Crucified Navy issue, it's probably still going to be able to hit it, even if it's getting like the missile precision script on it. It has a neutral matchup against the Griffin Navy. I mean, I guess. Crucified Navy has pretty decent strength, and it does have the ability to kite at 10k with Scorch. Or if it has beams, you can use multi-freak at that range. So yeah, it makes sense to me. It has actually has a like 41% chance against the Comet, which is also kind of surprising. But I guess the Comet has the free drones, so it's not entirely dead in the water if it is TD'd. And also it has a tracking bonus, and also the Rail Comet can probably just load like Spike and still hit it if it gets range disrupted. If it goes up close, it still does have the tracking bonus on the hull, which might be good enough. Quite surprising it has a really positive win rate against the Maulus Navy issue, considering the Maulus Navy issue doesn't have any bonus turrets and is mostly drone reliant and has the bonus scram. But the Maulus Navy issue is bad in my opinion, so you know, I just think the Crucified Navy issue has better stats. Firetail, 60% win rate. Guess that makes sense. RT dual web Firetail probably doesn't have as much options as the Rail Comet, just because even though it has the extra web, so you can't really go on, and it has a stronger tracking bonus, it's still artillery, so maybe you can have a better chance of going under the guns. And also the 10-second reload might screw over Firetails a lot more. Like when you're flying a tracking disruptor ship, a lot of the time you're playing that like script dance game where you like swap between scripts. When they're close to you, tracking speeds disrupt them, then they start to move away from you, then you swap to optimal range. You sort of switch between them, whereas the Firetail with the 10-second reload, you've got the same reload time as the scripts, so it's really hard for you to swap. I mean, like the same cooldown as the module. And it has a really poor rate against the Vigil Fleet issue, which is its worst matchup, and I guess that's to be expected because the Vigil Fleet has a lot of decentralized DPS. Like it's coming from many sources. Like the missiles on the Vigil Fleet are obviously the biggest damage source, but the free drones and the turret are pretty big sources as well, so it's hard to shut down all of the DPS from the Vigil Fleet. Moving on to the Hookbill, I'm not going to do the ones we already covered. Griffin Navy issue, 46%. I guess that makes sense. The Hookbill's normally fighting up close, so it'll probably get jammed by the Griffin Navy. I think the dual web Hookbill has a lot of plays against the Griffin Navy issue though, so I'm surprised that it's not higher. Hookbill has a slightly negative rate against the Comet. That makes sense to me because Rail Comet outtrades Rocket Hookbill, even with like Rage Rockets at like 10k. Hookbill does very, very well against the Maulus Navy. I guess the Maulus Navy doesn't really have any room to kite the Hookbill because of the missile range bonus that it has. And you just got better stats than it. Hookbill destroys the Firetail, makes sense to me. Rocket Hookbill beats dual web RT Firetail. Rocket Hookbill with the control Hookbills will beat them too, I think. And Hookbill has a negative win against the Vigil Fleet, which also kind of makes sense because the Vigil Fleet's slightly stronger at brawling than the Hookbill. Moving on to Griffin Navy issue and the ones we haven't covered already. It has a slightly positive win rate against the Comet. I mean, I guess that makes sense. Comet's fighting in scram range most of the time. Has a negative rate against the Maulus Navy because Maulus Navy has high strength, can scram it outside ECM range and put drones on it and kill it. Very high rate against the Firetail, but I guess that makes sense because the Firetail has the worst sensor strength, and it has a reasonable rate against Vigil Fleet, slightly below average. Again, the Vigil Fleet issue has some options to kite it away with the bonus web and just kill it. The Comet has a very high win rate against the Maulus Navy issue. I mean, I guess that you just can't beat a Comet in a Maulus Navy, really, especially the Rail Comet, because it can just outtrade your all ranges. It's 3 drones versus 5 too. Very high win rate against the Firetail. Again, you know, the Rail Comet just shits all over the dual web RT Firetail. It's got way more stats in it, and it can probably kill like AC Brawling Fits too very well. And kind of a neutral matchup slightly in the Comet's favor against Vigil Fleet. Vigil Fleet has really good brawling stats, and like Rocket Vigil Fleet issue can trade about equal with Rail Comet, so it makes sense that it's a really fair matchup. Morlus Navy issue versus Firetail is not in the Morlus Navy issue's favor. I think RT Firetail just has better stats in it and wins, and it has a negative win rate as well against the Vigil Fleet. Again, Vigil Fleet is a stronger brawler, has the same range on its web as the Morlus Navy issue has Scram, if not more. So the Morlus Navy issue has no room to kite, and the Vigil Fleet issue is just going to out-brawl it every time. And then the Firetail has a negative rate against the Vigil Fleet. Again, it's got very similar stats to the Rail Comet in the like Rocket Brawl Fit, so it makes sense that the Vigil Fleet can out-brawl it because it has the same range with RT as the RT Firetail. So that's all of the matchups between them. If we look at the overall stats, the Vigil Fleet issue, the Federation Navy Comet has the highest win rate, followed by the Vigil Fleet issue. These are the only two ships that have above 50% win rate against all the other ships in the class. And then slightly positive is the Hookbill and Griffin Navy issue. And then the Crucified Navy issue is slightly negative, and then bad ships are Morlus Navy issue, Firetail, and Slicer, according to this list. I disagree with the Slicer and the Firetail, though. I think those ships are much better than the Morlus Navy issue. If we go down to like the usage right now, this is from last week on zkillboard.com. The most popular ship by far is the Federation Navy Comet, which is not surprising. The second most popular is the Slicer, though, so despite the Slicer looking quite poor up here, the Slicer is still probably one of the most popular Navy frigates. And again, I really disagree with this rating. I think the Slicer is definitely, like, you know, not as strong as the Comet, but it's definitely up there. Then I think we have, like, followed by Hookbill, Firetail. Those are the original 4 too. So the Navy E-War frigates are, you know, much less popular than the original 4 ships. With the Griffin Navy, the Morlus Navy is actually really popular for the E-War frigate. The rest of them are sort of in the like around the 200s. But Morlus Navy is used a lot, and I think that's probably because it's used to kill farmers, especially in the Mimitar and the Mar Warzone. There's like pretty much like every 4 out of 5 ships is a 5 Warp Core Stab Punisher. And if you go on zkillboard and take a look at the individual kills, like a lot of the kills are killing farmers, which is also why it has this really high solo kill to death ratio. Up here, it's kind of surprising that the Vigil Fleet issue is not as popular as it should be, considering how great it is in the sort of matchup chart. The Vigil Fleet issue has no bad matchups aside from the Federation Navy Comet. And even then, it's a very neutral matchup. It's only like 3% into the Comet's favor. So it's surprising to me that the Vigil Fleet issue is not more popular than what it is right now. And also, this is just taking a look at other areas and how they compare. So if we take a look at every Tech 1 frigate, this is ignoring the Navy ones now, we're just looking at Tech 1 frigates. The Comet has the highest win rate here again, followed by the Vigil Fleet issue as the second highest win rate against Tech 1 frigates. On average, they all win above 80% of the time versus Tech 1 frigates, high 80s, low 90s. The weakest one is the Imperial Navy Slicer. I guess that makes sense to me because, you know, like bad Slicers die to, you know, like a Brawling Kestrel or something if they get caught. Whatever ship. It's the most skill-based ship. Crucified Navy issue having a bad matchup is also kind of weird, but I guess Tristan is one of the most popular Tech 1 frigates right now. So it having the worst matchup there is not really that surprising, I guess. Because Tristan would probably wreck it, kiting Tristan, if that's like making up a lot of the losses there. Surprisingly, the Hookbill also does quite poorly against other Tech 1 frigates, which is quite interesting. The rest of them are quite neutral. If we go into pirate frigates, however, so this is just counting the 7 pirate frigates in the game, The Slicer is now neutral. It's no longer in the bad category. And the Crucified Navy and the Hookbill and the Firetail have the worst odds against the pirate frigates. And I'm not really sure why that is. I would try and rationalize that, you know, maybe the Succubus really shits on the Hookbill or something. I mean, the Worm is obviously the most OP pirate frigate in the game by a very long margin right now. It's especially reflected if we go in and take a look at the raw stats here. The one at the bottom, which is the worst matchup for all of them, is always the Worm. Almost always, and Succubus is almost always the second one. Yeah, so it's always the Worm as the worst matchup for everything, and then the Succubus is the worst matchup for everything, with exception to the Crucified Navy issue, which the Daredevil is more of an adversary to it, which I guess kind of makes sense because the 90% web basically gets rid of the tracking disruptor bonus. It's kind of interesting that a lot of people complain about the Gamma, but the Gamma is almost always, along with the crew, are like the most popular ship to kill. Which again, is kind of interesting, I guess. But again, the Comet recurring theme, it's great against everything. That's why I kind of believe that it's slightly OP. The Griffin Navy issue has a slight edge against pirate frigates, but otherwise it's been neutral so far. And slightly positive against the Navy frigates. And I guess that's because a lot of them, I guess they brawl, and the Griffin Navy issue can take advantage of them. The only one it can't really fight is the Worm. But you know, the Worm's OP. Malus Navy issue is surprisingly neutral against Tech-1 frigates and pirate frigates, even though it has a very bad reputation against Navy frigates. And Vigil Fleet issue, again, definitely, it would be second best, but the Griffin Navy issue is up there this time. But again, the Vigil Fleet issue, recurring theme, is the second best frigate in these stats. And I kind of agree with that. So I don't want this video to be too long because it's just me rambling and looking at a spreadsheet and trying to make sense of just data that's probably not that useful. But hopefully this is interesting to you. I really do like going through these like spreadsheets and looking at different things and trying to figure out why things might be the way they are here. Again, this is only solo kills that are reflected in here, and the way the solo kills are collected can be quite weird. Like if a slicer comes into a like faction warfare plex and kills like some guy there, then and the rats on the kill mail, it won't be counted here, which might also be why the slicer's poorly represented. But it might also be just because the slicer's a very skill intensive ship. I definitely don't think the slicer needs any buffs. If I had to rate all of the Navy frigates in order right now, I'd say the Comet is definitely number one, as reflected in by the stats in all levels, and also just it feels to be the best. It's also the most popular on the list too. I think everything points to the Comet being a bit too good. The Vigil Fleet issue, I definitely think is one of my favorite ships, especially in nullsec. It's really underrated and it's really strong, and you know, judging by the stats here, it definitely looks really strong. Never doesn't have any negative matchups really. Just only the Comet, which we know is OP. Positive against everything, but it's not really all that popular for some reason, which is kind of surprising on this list. And then I think Crucified Navy issue, Hookbill, Griffin Navy, Firetail are all good too. I mean, I like all of the ships on this list. The only one that I personally do not like is the Malus Navy issue. I think it's kind of specific. It has a specific purpose for killing farmers, and it doesn't really have much of a purpose beyond that. It sucks against the other Navy frigates. Surprisingly, it doesn't suck as much against the pirate frigates as some other ships, which is also quite interesting to me, if we can find it in this list. For some reason, it has a very positive win rate against an Astero. Maybe it's good at killing explorers who like fit stabs or something. I think that might actually be like stacking this in its favor by a long margin, as you can see. Since the 65% win rate against Astero is pretty much the highest win rate for some reason, and that's kind of weird. Otherwise, it performs a lot worse against every other pirate frigate than everything else. Like if we compare it to the Republic Fleet Firetail over here, everything is worse than the Republic Fleet Firetail. It's just the fact that it wins so hard against the Astero for some reason, probably because one Pacific person was ganking explorers with it or something. Because there's only like 100 or so in that kind of tally. But yeah, I'll probably end the video now. Thanks for watching. If you find this interesting, let me know. If it's like boring as fuck, let me know too, because you know I can definitely get lost and make these videos too long and not interesting.